has to do with wind more than anything else. And I think that this again goes back to having one thing I loved about studying with Prof is that everything he did was based on concept. It was never based on, you need to do this one thing, you need to do this thing. It was always about concept. You need to have a concept underlying everything and allow that to guide the decisions you make individually to do the things that you want to do and play the things that you hear. And so with that being the case, the concept of addressing just calling it wind instead of calling it air already makes a huge difference.
Right.
And so oftentimes what I found with students is that they're just forgetting to breathe. And when it comes time to play, let's put it in an audition setting. We've performed enough to know how to deal with performance anxiety. The idea is that once you go on the stage, about 50% of everything that you know instantly goes out of the window. And so you have to practice in a way to make that additional 50% second nature. So once you get that blank, it doesn't make a difference. The second you blank out, you're still doing something that you can already do by rote. And that's the way we practice. When it comes to wind, that's one of the first things that students and professionals alike tend to forget, especially depending on one style or another. Like jazz is an interesting beast in itself, because once you're improvising, once you're on the page of thinking about that, oftentimes a lot of the basics of playing the instrument simply go away. And you find yourself doing all kinds of things that are considered bad habits, maybe destructive to your playing, that maybe sabotage your ability to play a full set. All of that comes into play the second you're thinking so much about, what line, what chord change is this? What do I want to say over this? So the idea of wind, I ingrain that into my students. And I tell them a story all the time. The thing that Prof did with me and with Sean, and there was another trumpet player, that phenomenal cat named Lee Hogans at the time. And the thing that Prof did with all of us, for the entire first year of our study, he would not allow us to play anything beyond concert F in the staff. That was it, that one note. And if that note was not perfect on demand at the beginning of your lesson, sometimes that's the end of your lesson for the day. And we were, we were hanging out a lot during that first year, and we get around each other, and the Prof let you get past that note. Nah, man, still on that one note. And that was for an entire academic year of study. But what that did to us is force us to learn that you have to breathe in a certain way. And the mistake that most musicians make is after they've taken in their wind, however they breathe in, because that can differ. However you breathe in, you want to instantly put that wind into the instrument, or else it loses the momentum you built up with your inhale. Mm-hmm. That's the first thing that always happens. One habit that's huge is a guy would bring their trumpet to their lips. They're ready to play. They'll take this breath and kind of hold it for a second. And then when it's time to play, release the air. When they do that, what they've done is now taken away whatever power, whatever attack they've built up, now is inconsistent. So the first thing that most of my students have to unlearn, or learn rather, is how to create a swing-like effect, like the air goes straight in and straight out. Teaching people how to breathe in rhythm with the music that they're playing. It's almost like yoga. But the idea is, if you have a count in, if they're going to count to 4 and you're coming in on beat 1, then beat number 4 is your breath, and beat number 1 you're playing. And so that just getting them to that point is that's a lesson in itself. But that I found that to be almost a universal corrector, because most of what you find is that initial attack is damaged by so many different another portion. When I talk about wind and just moving the wind, the embouchure, sometimes if the embouchure is not prepared before the wind hits it, then it's not going to respond consistently. Mm-hmm. Like sometimes you get a note, sometimes you won't. And so the idea of prepping your embouchure, before you take that breath, not necessarily having everything tightened, but at least having maybe 75% of your embouchure engaged and ready to go before you take that breath, that makes a difference on what consistently happens afterwards. So but still, it's the idea of moving your wind. Most of the times, the good and the bad that happens with the trumpet happens behind your teeth. And so that next portion, having to deal with what you're saying, which dictates the wind. If your wind was traffic, then your tongue is the traffic director, right? Mm-hmm. So if you don't have any control over what your tongue is doing, then there's no telling whether or not that wind will even make it past your lips and into the horn. So now the idea becomes to say certain things. And this is where we get to the point of being able to control both your inhale, your exhale, and your sound just by what you say. Mm-hmm. And Prof's whole thing is he had syllables for how you breathe in. Like we could do this now, and you probably already do this, but he breathes in one way that people breathe is saying like ha. Another way is saying ho. But that H portion of it is what kind of opens up your throat and forces that air in. Mm-hmm. So when you do that, you feel the sensation of the wind coming in. Mm-hmm. That's when you know that you've already got a good habit going. Now that you can feel the air coming in, and that's a consistent thing that you can recreate every time you're about to play. Mm-hmm. And the next thing is just getting that air out. And it's making sure that even from a syllable point of view, that there's nothing between that ha and whatever you say to play. So it's like ha, two, almost like a sneeze, and the air instantly shoots out. And once you get in the habit of doing that, then you get in the habit of creating a consistent sound on demand, a consistent attack on demand. And that can start a chain of events that goes great for you from that point forward. But that's the thing that has to be taught. That's the one thing that I see consistently that's not taught. So by the time I see trumpet players, even adults, even working adults, and they bring up issues of inconsistency, like you said, as a doctor, addressing one thing at a time, I found more often than not, it has to do with how they're initially getting that wind into their instrument. If they don't have a concept of breathing and playing, and they're just kind of going off instinct, then sometimes it'll work and sometimes it won't. But I guess for my personal career, I've been in so many situations where the red light is on. You have to get it right now or it'll never happen again. It's being recorded, so it'll be immortalized.
Yeah.
They're live on TV. I've been in so many of those situations that I had to force myself and remind myself that this is how I play. Before the count off comes, I need to do this. And every time I kind of pep talk myself into doing the right things, the right things happen. So, it's that. I know that was kind of a long and drawn out answer, but it still leads back to wind and having just a concept,